Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. I am so excited for this video because in this video we're going to be talking about some tips to get you out of the dreaded reading slump. I personally have been the victim of a reading slump many times and I hate them so much because it's like all you want to do is get back into that time where you loved reading, you loved going to the bookstore, picking out a new book, sharing with your friends your favorite read, going on BookTube, seeing what other people are reading, and you just can't. You have zero passion towards books or towards reading in general, and it makes you question why you became a reader in the first place. So in this video, I've collected a list of, let me check my notes. I have my notes right here because if I don't have it written down, I will not be able to remember what I'm going to talk about. So I have a list of 13 tips to help you get out of your reading slump. Okay, this first one isn't necessarily a tip, but is more just a way that you need to think. And that is that reading is supposed to be fun. I know it's hard to not stress out about being in a reading slump, but try your best not to. You will get back into reading. It just takes time. These are just some tips for like how to get you back into reading faster. It is totally okay to be in a reading slump. It doesn't mean you're a bad reader. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that the books that you've been reading recently are just not it, and you're just not in the mood to be partaking in this hobby that you love. I haven't even talked that much and I'm already parched. The next tip I have for you is one that throughout my research and then from personal experience also, I've seen this very consistently, and that is to revisit a favorite book or book series that you once loved. For me, when I was in a reading slump not that long ago, I was the queen of rereading books that I once loved. Whenever I get into a reading slump, this is one of the first things I try to do. And one time I remember I was in a really bad reading slump, and so I picked up Six of Crows, which is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. I'm not someone that generally annotates books. I just kind of read through them and I don't really highlight anything, but I really loved taking the time to like highlight my favorite quotes and just go back to a book that I know I loved at one point and seeing if I could find anything new in the book that I once didn't pick up. I think it's so fun. And then also it's like, especially if the book that you're reading has like a movie or show adaptation that you love, maybe going back to that and like rewatching that, it gets me really in the mood to reread the book because like obviously in the book there's a lot more details than in the TV show. This next tip was one that when researching I saw a lot about this tip as well, and this one has definitely helped me in the past with reading slumps, and that is to go to either your bookstore or your library and find a new book to take home. Obviously if you're at a bookstore, make sure you pay for it, but if you aren't wanting to spend money on a new book, go to your local library and peruse. Libraries are amazing, and I found myself utilizing my library a lot more recently. And so while you're at your bookstore or your library, I want you to go through the aisles, peruse all the different books that catch your eye, read the backs of them, read the synopses, whatever sounds interesting, take a picture of the cover. I love doing that in my camera roll. I just have so many books that I want to read and like want to pick up eventually. I want you to pick one book to bring home. Keep that book on your nightstand. Try to read a couple of pages of it every night if you can. I don't care if it's just you read like a paragraph and put it down. Maybe try to read at least a page or two every night. Just something to get your brain and your body used to reading again. I just feel like for me, whenever I bring home a new book, whether it's like I purchased it or I brought it home from the library, I just get those like endorphins and it makes me want to read that book immediately. Most of the time, obviously I don't, and then it just gets added to my endless TBR. Nevertheless, it gets me in the mood to read at least. The next tip is to try a different reading format. If you're someone that consistently just reads physical books, I would suggest you trying to step out of your comfort zone, maybe trying audiobooks for a change or trying to utilize your Kindle or your phone, something like that. You may find that all you really need to get out of this book slump was just to change the way that you read. For me personally, I constantly need to have a different book for each type of format because I just get in like moods where I want to read a physical book, or I want to listen to an audiobook on a walk, or I want to read something in my bed at night, so I need it to be on my Kindle because I don't want to have a special book light. There's all these different formats of reading nowadays, and I feel like it's really important to switch it up every now and then. Also tying it in with the rereading your favorite book or book series, I think it would also be a good idea that with when you're rereading this book, maybe you switch up the format in which you're reading it. If you physically read your favorite book when you first read it, maybe you try listening to the audiobook version of it. Maybe you'll enjoy that more. Just so when you're trying this new format of reading, you have the consistency of knowing that you love the book that you are reading, if that makes sense. Speaking of audiobooks, I personally love audiobooks. They at least help me get out of reading slumps a lot of the times. It definitely depends, but my next tip is to listen to an audiobook while you're doing something that you love. If you're really wanting to push yourself to get out of this reading slump, I think it's really important to try to implement reading as much into your daily routine as possible. example. Say that you love scrapbooking or doing some sort of craft where you usually listen to music or watch a show. I would highly suggest listening to an audiobook. One of my favorite things to do is just go on long walk and to listen to an audiobook. I just find a lot of the times when I'm just like sitting down physically reading a book, that is when I get into a reading slump, because I just feel kind of like gross for sitting for that many hours. That's just my own personal experience. So like having the option to just like go for a walk or go outside, do something, go on a long drive and pop in an audiobook, I've found in the past that's helped me a lot. The next one is one that's very hard for me usually because I never want to do this when I'm in a reading slump, and that is to try a new genre. I'm someone where I usually stick to my fantasy and romance books with the occasional contemporary, occasional mystery, occasional historical fiction. That's kind of my bubble, and that's kind of usually where I stay. And it can definitely be hard to push yourself out of that comfort zone, but I think that if you're not enjoying the books that you're reading, and say that you're like me and you consistently only read fantasy and romance books and you're in a reading slump, maybe try a different genre. And with this tip, I feel like it's hard to just say that because it's like, okay, and then what book? I think that a good tip would be to go on the Goodreads choice picks. And I know the Goodreads choice picks are very relative, and a lot of the times books that are amazing don't get picked to be on there. But I think that if you're trying to switch up genres, I think that could be a good idea, is to maybe look at the Goodreads choice picks for maybe the past year or the years before and see if you can find a new read there. They're usually categorized by the different genres, and so like you can go through there, look at the synopses, see what sounds interesting, and maybe try that out. The next tip is kind of similar to the previous one, but I feel like it's a little more specific, and that is to read a graphic novel. Yes, graphic novels are still books, and reading a graphic novel is still reading. I don't care what anyone has to say. It's like with the same people that say like that listening to audiobooks isn't reading. You can go away. That's not true. It's kind of similar to reading in different formats. Graphic novels is definitely a different type of reading, and there are so many good graphic novels out there. So I highly suggest that you pick one up. My personal favorite is the Heartstopper series. I love that series so much. And if you've never read it and you're in a book slump, try it out. Maybe it's not your thing, but you could see if graphic novels are your thing. Sometimes it's just the mindset of seeing all the different words on a page, at least for me, and being like, oh my gosh, this is the last thing I want to do. My attention span is so low right now. All I want to do is like scroll on social media or watch a TV show or something. They're usually very fast paced because there aren't that many words that they could fit on there. They're very entertaining because you're looking at all the different pictures. If your imagination is running low and you just can't get into any of these books that you're reading, you don't really need any imagination at all when you're reading a graphic novel, because the words are right there with the pictures of what is actually happening right there. Okay. This next tip, there are two ways to go about this, and that is to read a book about a subject that you're interested in. Say you're interested in like fashion or something, and then you decide to pick up a book about the history of fashion or a memoir of a famous designer that you admire. That could be something that you do. Now, what I suggest for this is something that has gotten me out of so many reading slumps, and that is fan fiction. Is there a new show or movie that you're loving where you currently have a new celebrity crush? Go read some fan fiction about them. There is so much fan fiction out there for so many different ships and different characters that I am almost positive you'll be able to find fan fiction about it. I remember when I shouldn't say this. I'm gonna say it. I remember when I used to watch Saved by the Bell in 9th grade. I don't remember how old I was. I was able to find Professor Jeremy Latsky, I think that was his name, fan fiction. Was there only like one available? Yes, but I was able to find it. I love fan fiction so much. These people writing these fan fictions should literally be published authors a lot of the time, and some shouldn't be. Yeah. But I feel like with fan fiction, it just goes into the part of like how reading is supposed to be fun. You don't always need to read the most pretentious little classic novel. Sometimes you could just read some good old Hermione fan fiction and have a blast. Reading out of obligation can really help you to get out of a book slump. I know that sounds kind of weird, but joining a book club is such a great way to push yourself to read. Discussing books with friends is so much fun, and honestly is one of my favorite things about reading. There are a bunch of different ways to join a book club. You could look at your local library, you could join one with your friends. There's so many different online communities that have different book clubs you can join. I know on Goodreads you can join a book club. There are so many different ways to get connected with other readers around you that really make reading such an enjoyable experience. And I feel like also being around people that are passionate about reading will also motivate you to read more. And that kind of leads us into the next tip, and that is to get book recommendations from people you trust. It can be really hard to stay in the know of what new books are coming out or what new books are popular. I feel like consistently, at least with like Book Talk and stuff, love love book talk, but I feel like at least on my For You page, it's the same books getting recommended over and over again for me, and it's the ones that I know for a fact that I won't enjoy. Now for this one, there's a couple different ways to go about it. You could ask a friend or a family member about a book that they liked recently and try that out. But for me, what has worked in the past is to go on YouTube or some sort of social media platform, and if there's a book influencer that you love and you trust their opinion on books, maybe try to see what they've been posting about recently. I personally love watching BookTube, and so there's plenty of booktubers that I trust their opinion on the different books that they're reading, and maybe check if they've done like a wrap-up video or some sort of thing and see if you can get some inspiration from them. Okay, the next tip is a little bit of a harder one, and this is for if you've tried everything to get out of a reading slump and nothing's working. I would suggest you try a reading challenge. There are so many different types of reading challenges out there, but the whole point of reading challenges are to motivate you to read more. I've done plenty of 24-hour readathon challenges in the past, and I just think those ones are so much fun. If you're doing something like that, make a whole event about it. Go get some snacks, go get a fun drink, do it with a friend, film it, post it on TikTok, something. I just find doing some sort of reading challenge really helps me to read a lot more and kind of makes like the whole reading experience more fun in a way and adds another element to it. If you're listening to me telling you doing a 24-hour readathon challenge and you're like, there is absolutely no way I'm doing that, like reading is the last thing I want to do, let alone do it for 24 hours, totally understandable. Maybe try to just like pick up a book that sounds interesting, sit down, set a timer for 1 hour or even 30 minutes, something like that, and just force yourself to read for that hour or for that 30 minutes until that timer goes off. See what happens. The next tip is don't be afraid to DNF. And if you don't know what DNF means, it stands for do not finish or did not finish. This is something I've had to teach myself, and that is that you don't need to finish every book that you start. It's okay if a book isn't hitting for you to put it away and either come back to it another time when you're in the mood or just never come back to it again. Just because everyone on the internet loved a certain book doesn't mean that you have to, or that you have bad taste or whatever. It means nothing. Books are so subjective. It's not a one size fits all for each type of book. There are books that I've read that I loved that my friends hated, and vice versa. If you're forcing yourself to read a book that you're not liking, that's only going to contribute more to your reading slump. It's totally okay to just like pick up a book, maybe read the first chapter and put it away. Anything to get you to read more is good. Okay, and the final tip that I have for you today is to try to find a new place to read. For me, I read a lot of the time in my room. One of my favorite things to do is to find a new reading spot. In the summer months when it's warm enough to go outside, that is my favorite thing to do, is to read outside. Whether it's my backyard or going to a park to go read, it's the best thing ever. And I feel like that helps me a lot because it makes the whole idea of reading more of like an activity than just like sitting in my room picking up a random book to read. Maybe there's a new cafe you want to try out. Okay, go to that new cafe and bring a book. Try to read it for like 15 minutes and look super pretentious and cool. Kill two birds with one stone. Yeah, switching up your environment and where you read has helped me out so much in the past. Okay guys, those are all the tips that I have for you today. I hope so much that these tips help you. You will get out of this reading slump. I believe in you. Obviously, there's no correct way to get out of a reading slump. It's different for everyone. So I hope that you can try at least some of these tips. Let me know if they work for you because we're all in this together. I haven't met a single reader who hasn't at one point been in a reading slump. So just know you'll get out of it. We've all been through it. And yeah, I hope you at least take something away from this video. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much to me if you subscribed and left a like and comment down below what's worked for you in the past with reading slumps. I would love to know. I know I'm going to be in more reading slumps in the future, so I would love to hear some more tips from you guys. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. Bye guys.